Okay, so welcome to this episode of Visionary New Earth Leaders podcast. I'm so excited because today we are going to talk about how to conquer fear, but in a very unique and special way. And I have a very special guest here, Lauren, who's going to tell us more about her approach and how we can overcome this. And as being visionary leaders, is obviously a really important piece. But I'm going to hand over to Lauren. Please tell us who you are, where you are in the world, perhaps, and what you're here to do, how you're here to contribute in this world.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to have this conversation with you. So, yeah, for those of you who have no idea who I am, which is perfectly okay, I am Lauren Ray. I am known as the Courage Coach, and the work that I do is mindset empowerment and mentorship for entrepreneurs and creative women. So it's really about that art of conquering fear and the art of mastering courage and what that can do for every area of our life, but specifically for leaders and entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. So I always like to know a little bit about background about people. Did you always talk about fear and courage, or where did you come from? Like, what happened? Have you
It's
always?
actually it's
Yeah.
actually a really interesting story, I am told. Obviously, we never find our own stories interesting, but so my background is I'm a recording artist and songwriter. So I'm still a recording artist and songwriter that never goes away. But I had that classic midlife crisis, quarter life crisis moment in my mid 20s where I woke up and I was working for a record label, great job, not dissing the label at all, but I was in an office. And I'd realized I'd got to my mid 20s. I'd moved to London to supposedly pursue my dreams, my passions, my goals. And yet I was sitting in an office, grey walls, 9 to 5, managing a team, great job, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I realized that what I was doing was the path of least resistance, like we all do. Most people go through life the path of least resistance. We go to school, we maybe go to university if we're able to, and then we just get a job that happens to come up, and then that leads to another job. And before we know it, 5, 10 years have gone by, and we haven't really consciously created and crafted our lives. Like we've just gone with whatever's coming up. And I had this real kind of, I'm not religious, but this come to Jesus moment of like, what am I doing with my life? And it was that moment that I fell down the rabbit hole of personal development. I think I was bored, and let's pretend it was my lunch break. Let's be honest, it was probably midway through the day. And I came across some TED Talks, and specifically Brene Brown and her work around vulnerability and courage. And it kind of was a light bulb moment in my head where I realized I was getting in my own way. My fear of failure, my fear of disappointment, my fear of judgment, all of the fears that we all have was stopping me and was keeping me on this path of least resistance. And so I then decided to sort of claim my kind of courage and figure out how to become courageous and expand beyond the fears. And when I was able to do that, it led me to becoming the recording artist I wanted to. I was then in Nashville recording my first album, which I titled We Will Need Courage. So it's always been a theme and brand of mine. So my first album is We Will Need Courage. And I was in Nashville, a dream of mine. And then I was able to tour around the Europe and UK, standing in front of thousands of people performing my songs. And then my second album came out right at the beginning of the pandemic, which is called Woman in the Arena, based on the Teddy Roosevelt quote about standing in the arena and being that courageous person. So it's always been a theme, but it wasn't until the pandemic hit and my music career came to a grinding halt, obviously everyone's lives did, that I realized I'd been given an opportunity to pursue another passion of mine, which was to help other people understand how to get out of their own way, because it'd been so powerful for me and had completely changed the trajectory of my career.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's an amazing story, really, because I can relate. We often have light bulb moments, or like there's a moment where you go, oh my God, I need to change this, or something needs to change. So that was really beautiful. So what did you then do? What happened then? Like, because then you're like, okay, I need to help others. What do I do now? So what happened?
It was one of these weird moments where I'd started mentoring, or I was technically coaching, but I didn't really understand what coaching was at the time. I just thought I was consulting and kind of mentoring. And I had started mentoring other artists because other artists and creators had come to me naturally being like, I'm sorry, how did you do that? And it's very much in my human design mentorship and that kind of role. And I'm a 6-2 manifestor. So I had a lot of people coming to me asking me like, how did you do that? Show me how you did this. And so I was teaching people. And I realized that no matter how many times people had the information, if they weren't taking action with it, it really had to be on a deeper level. And so I suddenly realized that I'd been following someone called Reese, who runs a company called Yes Supply. I had no idea why I was following her on Instagram. I'd been following her for about a year and a half, but had no conscious awareness of why. And suddenly, because of the pandemic, she had moved her business online. She was training coaches and people into hypnotherapy, EFT, and all these powerful subconscious modalities. And it suddenly popped up on my newsfeed, and I thought, that's why I'm following her. I'm supposed to learn these things. So I just invested in her training program, which was life and success coaching, hypnotherapy, EFT, time techniques, various things. And I just went deep into it because I knew how to do it for myself, but I really wanted to make sure I had some actual skill set and tools so that I could really empower somebody else on a subconscious level. And since I've had those tools, I've been able to expand my growth even more because now I'm working on an even deeper level than just, the conscious and the willpower.
Yeah, I love that because look, I have many, many tools. Many people listening to the show will be having tools, and we do need to be certified. We need to have some tools. But could you explain to me, because we went on a retreat together, and I remember you explaining this particular, well, maybe it was in your no, it wasn't in your hot seat, it was in your training piece,
Yes.
I think, where you were explaining about how fear stops us, and then how we can, and the actual description of courage, what it actually is. Because most people would say, well, just feel the fear and do it anyway. That's not
my biggest bugbear. It's
kind of not
correct,
what
but
we're
not
doing.
quite.
Correct, but quite not correct.
Yeah.
Can you, in your most amazing professional, like fantastic way, explain what you explained that time to me and to the viewers as well, because this would be so useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the hashtag feel the fear and do it anyway. It means well, and it's technically correct. It is what courage is. It's feel the fear and doing it anyway. But what I realized is that if it was as simple as that, we'd all be most courageous and living our best lives right now. Just as like if strategy was all we need, we'd all be millionaires by now. Like obviously there's a missing piece.
Sure.
And courage actually originally meant, it comes from the Latin word core, which means heart. So it's actually a heart word. It's all about, really living one's truth and living it and in truth and expanding beyond all the fears. And what I was showing you in that demonstration back in Portugal was that all of our emotions have these frequencies. So, fear, guilt, shame are a kind of low vibe frequency, as you do energy work, because you have a comprehension of this. And when you look at the scale of consciousness of the vibrational frequencies of all these emotions, everything that we are always wanting to avoid, the fear, the guilt, the shame, is at the lower frequency. And all the things that we are aspiring to receive, which is the neutrality, the expansion, the enlightenment, the love. When you look at that like visual of the consciousness, courage, the vibration of courage is literally at that tipping point. So everything is literally on the other side of the courage. So the more you can allow yourself to expand and vibrate at the frequency of courage and move beyond and expand beyond fear, the easier it is that when you feel the fear, because we can't avoid fear, we can't feel fear, avoid guilt, we can't avoid shame completely because we're human beings. But the quicker you're able to expand into that vibration of courage and expand into those things, the quicker you can feel the fear and do it anyway. So it's really understanding the nuance of courage is not as simple as this, but someone's capacity to choose courage is higher when they have higher levels of self-efficacy, self-trust, self-confidence, self-worth, when they have a higher level for vulnerability and discomfort. So the way that I work with my clients is on a subconscious level, actually understanding where their fears are mostly programmed and conditioned, first and foremost, but then actually building up their self-trust and self-confidence, because it's logical when we believe in ourselves more, when we feel we don't have all the fears and the program and the beliefs in our subconscious keeping us stuck, it's so much quicker to hashtag feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes.
So I kind of bridge the gap between the feel the fear and do it anyway, and the work that I do is that in-between step that makes it a lot easier for people to do it.
Yes, exactly. And I could hand on heart actually say that because of all the deep inner work that I've done, I don't really have fear. Like I had maybe momentarily, but it's like really easy for me to feel the fear and do it anyway. Like literally it's like a second, I'll just go and do it.
Yeah.
And that's like, I talk about embodied leadership, so what this means as well. So I would like to dive deeper actually in to see how, because you do deep inner work, I do deep inner work, we all do, many of us do this, but I'd like to talk about, if you don't mind, the untangibleness of this, because, and we've had this conversation with so many entrepreneurs, like the things that feels untangible. You were explaining it from the level of the Hawkins scale of the consciousness here, and everyone can, and on an intellectual level, what does that result in our lives? Do you know what I mean? What would that look like in an everyday person's life? I can describe what it looks like for me, but from your perspective, what does that look like? Because people will be like, well, where is my results? Do you know what I mean? So I think, what do I get out of this? Yes, I will spend the 5K, but what am I going to get? Do you know what I mean? So
for me, it's so the results are, I mean, the results are limitless, because
sure.
when I explain to my clients that once you have the capacity to expand beyond fear and reprogram your subconscious mind for success, there's actually, it's unlimitless, it's a complete limitless potential. So, but the first step is always really recalibrating that person's understanding of what their success is and what they want, and making sure that they're building the business, the entrepreneur, the life, the leadership that they actually want, because that's really key. Because I'm sure you see all the time people building really successful business like totally out of alignment, not actually what they're wanting it, and then being miserable. There's absolutely no point building anything. Then for me, living a life of courage isn't courage unless you're really doing it fully in alignment with you. So I also incorporate human design into this as well, because it's really important to fully understand who we are. But the tangible results can look like everything from, starting the business. I mean, I work with a lot of new entrepreneurs as well, like that fear of like actually taking that step. So the results are starting the business. The results are charging what you want to charge. The results are getting more clients because you're being more courageous, being more visible, speaking your truth, standing out in the online space. I mean, I know that I stand out because I'm one of the few people who are combining, I think I'm probably the only people right now combining subconscious work, human design, and courage building work within the entrepreneurial space. But I am fully owning that, despite people telling me that that's not something that people will buy. I'm like, no, it's what people need, and then you stand out, and then it's a very busy online space. So the tangible results are standing out, getting more clients, having that more visibility, having greater impact, receiving more money because there's no fear around money. Because one of my biggest blocks, I'm always vulnerable about this, one of my biggest blocks at the beginning of my coaching business, because of my history in the music industry, because the music industry essentially socializes and conditions us for musicians to be starving artists.
And almost a bit of a collective thing going on there, right?
We repel, I mean, essentially, I did everything in my power to repel money in my music career. Like, it's ridiculous. And so I brought that into my coaching business, and I realized I had a huge, terrible relationship subconsciously, consciously, energetically, everything around money. And it was doing this work allows me to feel less fear around receiving money, fear around what money means, fear around handling money. Like, one of my fears was having too much money and then the tax man coming and making a mistake, like totally irrational, but it was in there, it was in my subconscious. And so the tangible results are limitless. It's doing the thing, it's having more visibility, having more clients, making more money. But I think at the core of it, it's this peace. And maybe I'm just saying the word peace because I'm a manifestor and that's what I aspire to, but it's that feeling of peace or success, or because you're doing it in a way that feels good. And it's so much more ease, there's less procrastination, there's less perfectionism. It's just this feeling of moving through life in a really empowered energy, which if people don't want that, then that's fine. But that's what I want. I want to feel like I'm living my life really empowered and really, and there's the feeling of not waking up at 90 and realizing that I'm not the one that said no to myself. For me, that's a tangible result in itself.
Exactly. Yeah, I even bring that in sometimes. I say, like, well, when you are laying there, not to be morbid, but when you're laying there on the deathbed, you're not going to be thinking about the car that you drove. Like, you've got to think about like all the lovely things and the beautiful relationships and amazing impact and the fun and all the things that you did. That's going to go through your mind, so I was like, yeah, that is true. So whatever we define as success, important, obviously.
Well, it's that book Bronnie Ware's the 5 Regrets of the Dying. She spent years working in a care home with looking after people around on their deathbeds, and the top 5 regrets, I mean, the number 1 regret was, I wish I had the courage to live a life more true to myself or not what others expected of me.
That's massive. That was number one.
Huge.
And I think that is just conditioning, isn't it? And just living through the collective sort of lens, isn't it? Yeah, totally. I would love to talk, but there was something that came through when you were talking earlier, and it was about bringing, gosh, I can't remember now. It was about bringing this, that was it. So a lot of my clients are obviously like healers, channels, psychics, spiritual, like in this way.
Mhm.
And we have the same, the starving healer, right? Similar there.
Yeah.
So I would love to have this conversation about what can we see maybe in the next few years, because the online world is changing, but also the world is changing, about really crediting these more feminine, perhaps creative, more intuitive professions. And like music would be one of them, obviously. I mean, if you make it in music, obviously you will make money. But also with these intuitive skills, the more the feminine skills that we can all actually acquire. Just talk to me about that, what you feel like, just what comes to you, because it's changing, like, what's endorsed, can we endorse ourselves and say, well, this work is really high value work and it should be paid really well,
I think it's a really, really important question, and I think it's a really important conversation to have, because I do feel the world is starting to wake up and shift. And I think, and I hope, and I want to be part of the movement, as you are, of driving the narrative forward that why not really value monetarily, financially, the good that's being done in the world. Because at the moment we've got it backwards. A lot of the people who make the most money in the world are actually damaging the planet, damaging the earth. And if we really think about, society, and this is me getting on my soapbox a little bit,
no, go on, get it all out.
Get on the soapbox.
Get it all out.
Wave the flag. But like, if you really think about it, most of the structure of the world at the moment is set up so that, and I'm going to use women particularly as an example here. I understand that men are impacted this in different ways for different reasons, but obviously my passion at the moment is helping women. But it's understanding that most of the corporations making the biggest amount of money in the world are thriving off women not feeling good enough. Like, the whole structure of the world is that women not feeling good enough and all this kind of thing. And I would really love to see the world shift, where actually more money is made because we're empowering people. More money is made because we're creating people, building self-esteem, building self-worth. And I would really love that shift, because at the moment we've lived a good portion of the last few decades of empowering over, and I want to have empowering with and empowering others be the shift in this narrative. Because how incredible would it be? Because what is life without music? What is life without art? What is life without connection and human connection? And the world is, I'm getting so on my soapbox right now.
And unconditional heart. Hello.
The world is falling apart because we're becoming more disconnected from each other and more disconnected from ourselves. And the things that are going to heal that and bring that back together is ourselves and feeling freaking actually okay about who we are, because that's going to bring down consumerism in spaces that's ruining the planet. It's going to bring deeper connection and happiness to ourselves, which is going to take money out of the hands of the pharmaceutical companies that are just pumping us full of drugs because we don't feel good enough in ourselves.
Exactly.
And it's going to shift the income. So I want to see a shift in where the money is being driven, and the only way that happens is if people who are doing good in the world can actually thrive and do the good work, because that's what's going to see the balance shift. And then money talks, the less money we're pumping into the spaces that are thriving on us not feeling good enough, that's when it shifts. And so we kind of have to swing the balance a little bit here. I just went way on a tangent.
No, it's an absolutely fantastic tangent. I love it. And it all comes back to the radical responsibility for ourselves, because I talk about this as a part of my little thing, radical responsibility. And I feel that that doesn't come with it's not like a harshness about radical responsibility. It's more like, look, really connect deep within yourself and make a new path or cut a new pathway for generations to come. This is why I always say, like, this is something I talk to, my Facebook group and when I do lives and things, like, we need to endorse ourselves. Like, we need to say, I can charge whatever I want for my healing, like, for this work, because however I feel about the transformation that is amazing that I give, this is what feels the correct exchange. And it shouldn't be attached to the narrative or the collective subconscious beliefs about it, or, you know, the history. Same thing for the artist. So I believe that's where part of the courage, right? And a part about deprogramming ourselves, that actually something is possible that were not possible before, you know. And go on, fill in.
It actually takes a lot of courage to even take that radical responsibility, because it's like, for me, it's I think it's one of the most empowering and also quite confronting moments in a person's life when they realize how much they are responsible for their own lives. And it takes a lot of courage to own that. It takes a lot of courage to see that, to really see ourselves. So it's, you know, part of the work that I do with people is really dissecting, okay, who are you, who you've been, with complete self-compassion, with complete self-love. But it's like, it takes an awful lot of courage to really look at ourselves and go, I have been an active participant in my life.
Yeah, exactly.
And therefore I get to change it. But it can be equally empowering and confronting for people.
Brilliant.
But I would love this conversation to happen more and more often, because it will give people permission to do that. And there'll be less shame around it, and there'll be less sort of like, I think shame's the perfect word for it. There'll just be less shame about what we have done in our lives or not done in our lives so far. Like, a lot of people don't change because it has to require them to admit they haven't done something so far. And I think that can be a touching point for people.
Yeah, and it's like giving yourself compassion in that moment, I suppose, and actually say, look, hands up, yes, I was fully responsible in these things, but I get to change it. Like, I get to change things as well, I feel. Yeah, I didn't mean the radical. It's like, you know, ostrich. So in this hand, in the spiritual community, very much like spiritual bypassing. Oh, I'm just light. You know, it's like gets me really going, because I feel that we are our own leaders. Like, we are the leaders from within, and together we will lead. But also, what I feel is coming through here is being completely naked in a way, because like you almost like take off all the things that you were thinking or believing, or that were stopping you, or the ifs and buts and shoulds, and just go, actually, it's okay. I'm gonna be okay. We can do this together. We can get naked in that way, like, you know, completely bare on who you are. And the more people that do that, I suppose, the more people then will follow, because they're like, oh, she's just done that. Okay, good. I feel like maybe I should be doing that as well. So I think the conversations are big here. I mean, there's so many different topics about that one, isn't it, to actually bring it to the surface. Yeah. So when it comes to, let's just go back into the courage bit. In your experience, what's the most things that people fear and stops them from going into courage? Because there's going to be some typical things that is like, well, this and this and this will happen if I do that, so I better just stay where I am. What's your...
It's a combination of a fear of failure, but it's more linked to this fear of disappointment. Like, I really feel people can't hold that feeling of being disappointed. And I think people, that feeling of failure and being disappointed, and then laced into that is like a feeling of embarrassment that they went for something and didn't happen, and people would rather not try than try to be. And this is, I'm going to be honest with, this is something that really held me back up until my mid-20s. It was part of the reason why I hadn't really put myself out there for my music, because I had this thing of like, how embarrassing would it be if I was like, I am going to be a singer and a songwriter and I'm going to tour the world, and then it never happened. Like, how embarrassing. And that is a big block. It's the fear of failure and the judgment and the disappointment all laced into one. And I find that to be the most potent and most common. And of course, the fear of not being good enough. But I think I think really that's even underneath that layer. But I think consciously people are more aware of this fear of failure and disappointment, which is
fear of success as well.
Yeah.
And like family members or friends, you know, knowing that maybe it feels like you don't fit in anymore because you changed your reality. I mean, that's just something came to me. And feeling of fear of failure, I suppose, as well. But what was really interesting, I've had another conversation with a friend, and we were talking about this whole thing about if I say it out loud and then it doesn't happen, that's going to feel ashamed. You know, I'll feel ashamed. But what if we can say, okay, I shall declare it publicly, and can you support me in this? Do you know what I mean? Like, turn the energy around and say, look, I'm saying it, I'm doing it, I'm committing. I can't quit now because I've said it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I did. So when I realized that fear of sort of declaring my dreams and declaring my big goals and then not having it happen, and I hadn't really publicly, I mean, people knew I was a singer-songwriter, but it was a very different energy. And the way to shift that was I was working in this office at the time, and I remember walking back into the office after I had this like quarter-life crisis moment, and I remember saying to my kind of couple of close friends who had worked there, and my boss, who she's amazing, and I said, next year, so I think this is 2014, so I said in 2015, I am going to record my first album. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go to Nashville, I'm gonna record my first album. And I was like kind of declaring it because I knew then I kind of had to do it, because I was like, well, at the very least I have to at least do it. Even if no one ever listens to the album, I have to have got that far because that's what I've declared. And I remember then walking into a bank in my lunch break a couple of days later and getting a bank loan, private bank loan, so I could have sort of, you know, pay for certain things I needed. Well, I needed a new car so I could tour, I needed some equipment, I also needed to be able to fund certain things, and so I got a personal loan out, and that kind of got the ball rolling. But I actually use this phrase, and I actually just did a podcast episode myself on this, but it's the phrase ask hole. So I say I became an ask hole. I kept asking for advice, asking for connections, asking for help. And I kind of, that really brought a lot of momentum, but it took a lot of courage to even ask for help. But it's kind of, once I got over that and started asking, that's when things started happening much, much quicker.
Exactly. And, you know, also, you work, what comes to me now when you say this is like, you work with the mind, you work with the subconscious, you work with the energy as well. So what I really noticed is that when we set ourselves bigger goals and then when we speak them out, I mean, abracadabra actually means I create what I speak. So like, if you say it, it's gonna happen, right? So if we can just kind of lean into the magic a bit, like, okay, I put it out there, there's energy. So, you know, it's going to happen, right? When we can detach from the when and how, we can just say it. If people can trust that, I know it sounds maybe a little bit sort of airy-fairy, but from an
I'm on board.
not at all, but from an energetic perspective, you've actually put the energy out there. It's in the field, right? And what I noticed was I kind of always done that, but then, you know, you have your moments where you go back in a bit of a circle and you go, oh gosh, it feels like I've done full circle here. I haven't really practiced what I preach. But anyway, last year I was really tapping into this, like, right, we are awakening 1 billion people by 2030. This is what we're doing. We're leading, we're changing, we're becoming global. We're doing all these things. And since then, without me taking action on that, like actually not sort of going on, I don't know, world stage where, you know, 1 billion people are watching, because that's not exactly happening right now. Other things happens, like I get invited to all these big things, and I'm like, well, that is obviously without me taking a specific action on the exact thing what I just said, the universe is actually listening.
Yeah.
And I suppose if we can trust that that's what happens when we speak it out, why not?
Exactly. No,
You did your album.
Honestly, once I declared to the 7 people around in the office at the time that I was going to, you know, the world, that I was going to do my first album, you know, and started kind of, you know, we are activating the RAS and we're activating the part of our brain that's then suddenly going, oh, this is important to her now. Like, it's the energy, it's also the subconscious, and it's suddenly then like this opportunity comes up, oh, this opportunity comes up, and then I asked this person to do a songwriting session, and then they did an album, and I was like, that's an amazing album. Who's the producer? And it all kind of, you can see, like, it's so fun looking backwards from the moment you declare you want the thing to see all of the little lines that you would never have been able to plan. You would never have been able to plan and totally curate. And that's why I say to my clients, like, to detach from the how to a certain degree, because how boring is life going to be if you know every single step's going to happen? I love being surprised. Like, I can't even fathom, like, my next goal. I can't even fathom right now how that's actually going to happen. I will just do my best and take the steps, but I can't wait to look back and go, I would never have guessed. That's so
no, you would never have guessed that. And you couldn't have on any rational level could have worked that out with your intellectual mind. Do you know what I mean? It's truly a creation of like the universe and all the other things that you put out there. But that also come back to, and I think we could round up on this conversation, how powerful we are.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Scary so.
it's quite scary how powerful we are, because, and that's another thing, if everyone could tap in, because this is why I call this visionary new earth leaders, like if you can tap into how powerful you are, you can create anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about that for a moment, and then we're going to round up, I think, and then I'm going to share all your lovely links and everything.
Yeah, I think that you put the nail on the head there. I mean, I think when we really truly realize how incredibly powerful we are and our capacity of what we're actually capable of, again, it's that moment of like, it's an empowering and scary moment in equal measures, because when we realize how incredibly powerful, we realize how much we've got in our own way. But then when we can choose that choice moving forward, I mean, what I've seen in, I mean, yourself and people I know, and in my own clients as well, like when I see people who really realize that and own it and harness it, it's mind-blowing what I'm seeing people create. And I'm so excited that I'm in this space and I'm seeing it, and I feel like I'm now part of this, because like a couple of years ago, I didn't know this world existed. I will be totally honest. I had no idea that this kind of work was being done on this level. And it's so exciting and so liberating to see it and then own it for myself. And I just love that people like you and, you know, myself and other people are spreading this message, because I know that there are people right now who don't know this exists. And then in a couple of months, maybe tomorrow, maybe from watching this, it's going to wake them up.
Something will click.
And that's going to change the entire trajectory of their life. And that's just so exciting to just to think about.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Lauren. I just also want to say, look, guys, if you're looking for the right energy and the right space to be, hang out with people who are already doing it. Like, this is what I always say, whether that is, you know, you can come and join me, you can come and join Lauren, but wherever you go, make sure that you join where there is this high level of, just not high level of energy, but it's just like what is possible, because that's the kind of energy we want to be in. And then it becomes a lot easier as well. So,
well, courage is contagious. So get in the space
contagious,
people, and it'll be so much easier.
Exactly. So did you want to share, is there any, I know this podcast right now is going to be released on YouTube, and then we'll do it later on the, you know, iTunes and everything, but is there anything that is anything evergreen that people can get, or is there anything that you want to really sort of share that you feel like they can go and grab? Obviously all the links will be in the show notes, but if there's anything you want to actually say.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I mean, you can always find me on Instagram at I am Lauren Ray. I do have my own podcast that I've just launched last week, which is called Courage Pod with Lauren Ray. But I do have a program called Courage Academy, which opened 4 weeks ago, and it's going to be evergreen, always open. And it is a space that has all that work that I just talked about. It's really building people's courage and expanding what's possible for them. So Courage Academy is open and will be open whenever this goes live.
Lovely. And then you probably have a couple of freebies or something, or something. Did you share something that they can?
Oh yeah, so my podcast is free, but I also have some freebies on my website. So if you just go to my website, couragecall.com, they're always changing. So I want to make sure that I just keep it open, but there are always about 2 or 3 freebies on my website.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we love that, because people might go, oh, I'll have that. And then, you know,
freebies.
Nice. I love that. I love that. Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming. I feel so energized speaking to you, and it feels so amazing, and it's just changed the world together. Like, whoa, so exciting. Yay, like, whoa. And thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.